in a different way. Like you're well traveled in terms of people. And I was like, oh, that's really nice to say.
Yeah, traveler of the mind.
Yeah. I've had the privilege of knowing a lot of really interesting and very different folks, and so I'm really getting excited that my partner and Lena and I are getting ready to.
Okay, so you're going with her.
Yeah,
cool.
Like just go to different places and check shit out. Yeah, so that's going on. I
Sounds
am
cool.
in short-term career transition, but there's lots of opportunities, and I think I got one of them, and it's going to be all right. So while there's chaos and instability there, getting better at surfing it. It's happened so many times now that I'm
a world without
freak out less.
a world without question marks would be kind of boring. I think.
Yeah.
That would be
Without
pretty terrifying.
uncertainty. Yeah.
The third thing I'll say, and then I'll end that
And you're checking.
is the third thing that's really exciting in my life right now is music. I've
Never heard of it.
Yeah, right. It's just a rumor. But also,
Cool. Because you're in a couple bands, right?
I'm in a few projects, and it's pretty cool. It's like having a garden in which you have different kinds of plants, and they need slightly different things, but then again, they need a lot of the same things. Right.
It's
And
true.
so it kind of grounds me, and actually, it's been really cool to be in one project, like a folk acoustic project, in which I'm not the primary songwriter, and I'm like the secondary songwriter. I come in and add bells and whistles and different dimensions and stretch it. And
Punch it up.
Yeah, and then give it a killer finish.
You're like what do they call those? The script people that punch up scripts.
Like it's
Hollywood.
great to be, it's great to be the 2-punch of a 1-2 punch. It's like just as satisfying of roles. It's a different one. And then
Cool.
in other projects,
Almost like an arranger or something.
yeah. And then other projects is like when I'm taking more of a creative lead, it's nice. I feel like bringing experience across those different projects. It's teaching me a lot about people, about myself, in terms
Cool.
of empathy. So I'm thankful for that in my life.
Empathy's cool. Good.
It's given me
Bringing
a
it
lot of,
bringing it back with the empathy
No,
reference.
I mean, like really, like it's given me a lot of. It's helped me at work. It's
Oh,
helped
that's
me-
cool.
It's helped me in other relationships that have no creative component. Just
Huh.
working for fun
Just the tool set
with
is-
others
yeah.
on various things, and then like band's really cool because they involve your heart and your mind.
Yeah.
And if you're a vocalist, you gotta mean it, or everyone can tell.
That's true. That's a good point. So how many projects? 2, 3, 5,
Technically speaking, it's 4.
4?
What are the names?
Damn.
Well, none of these have flowered. All of them are in the vegetative state in which their bodies are growing big and strong. And they're getting ready to go. But I have been in enough that I know that's where they're going. So, one doesn't have a name.
But is referred to as.
The band with John in it
Okay.
is probably the shortest route. I think it should be called Command Auditory Hallucination.
Like CIA code names for the bands before they actually
So-
have names, like Operation John, Operation Band with John.
It's kind of like Operation Band with John.
Yeah.
Because it also has Ben, a longtime friend and guitarist, and so there's that one. And we're a multi-generational band. We don't have a name yet, but we play a really interesting mixture of heavy music from different eras smashed together. So sometimes it sounds like 70s blues rock, and sometimes it sounds like Death Doom from the 90s, and then sometimes it sounds like primordial or progressive post-metal stuff, and then it's a real fusion band because we have different generations of people in the band.
Oh, I
And-
see.
And so it's really I've played with people who are 55 and people who are 45 and people who are 35, and it's taught me a lot that way. That one's one of them. It doesn't have a name.
Okay, cool.
The acoustic project is Stone Room, and that's with Chris Whitlock, and we are pretty close to recording
Cool.
with that one. We're almost
Nice.
there. Then there's
Red
And then,
beard.
Redbeard, yes. Then there's a band which I'm in with you two guys, in case you forgot.
What? What?
I know. Actually, both of these hosts
First
are
I've heard of
currently in a music project with me.
Huh.
You've been doing it for months. You just don't remember.
Huh.
No.
It's true.
Tentatively and increasingly titled Apotheosis.
Yeah.
I think
That's a good name.
It's
It took me a while to warm up to it. It did. At first, I didn't like it.
It could be the guest speakers.
You know,
I'm
the guest
kinda st- I
speakers
still
is
sort of have,
fucking
like,
also my second
sort of a
favorite. I
soft
agree.
spot for that one.
The guest speakers
I'm not
is
saying
pretty
I don't.
savage.
is it too jokey though?
What do you think?
That's like, I don't know. I guess it
Yeah.
it really turns to us. Is it
Yeah.
too jokey for us, like
Right.
for us to carry off with confidence and to mean it in all kinds of weird ways?
I think we could do it. I think we could also have both names for different setups.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
One thing I realized was that if you called it the guest speakers, you could call the album Apotheosis, and it would totally work.
That's an idea.
Right.
Yeah. That
But I
would
don't
work.
know if it goes the other way.
Yeah, I don't think it goes the other way because if you call the band Apotheosis, and the album's called The Guest Speakers,
Yeah, it doesn't work as well.
It's not as. It's a
it
really.
needs to be called more like The Wind from Beneath or something.
The Wind from Nowhere.
Maybe that's a farting reference. So.
Void Ambassador.
Chief Wind in Pants.
Oh my gosh.
Oh boy.
So,
Is that your check-in?
like, I guess, okay, he was asking me about projects. I'll finish it up. There's
Okay.
that one. So, Apotheosis, in single quotation, because it's not official, but it's sort of close, is a really interesting project. It's very heartfelt for me, and it's very, like, oh, that's good, thanks.
Sorry about that.
It's a little loud.
Yeah, it's very loud.
Heartfelt project for you.
Yeah, which is great for an extreme metal band. It's sometimes extreme metal bands are they become very intellectual, and they become very sort of stylized to the point where they're, what do you call it, sort of like posh lost, I think is the term you
Posh
use.
Lost. Yes.
Right, so that can happen out in the ends of prog, and there's an end of prog that's out in metal.
Yeah, that is like a huge pitfall for a lot of things, but that'll definitely, because if you take it too seriously, it's like becomes more of a joke than if you didn't take it as seriously.
One of
Yeah.
my most
Like the Posh Lost thing is right on, which is I think Nabokov's.
one of my
phrase.
most favorite and professional extreme metal bands who continues to put out album after album of devastatingly awesome metal.
Metallica.
The Black Dahlia Murder.
Oh, right, yeah.
And they are very silly.
Isn't that adorable?
Dude, it's nice of you.
Yeah. They just played or are playing soon or something.
Black
That's
Dahlia Murder,
probably
we
true.
just missed it, yeah.
Yeah,
we just missed it.
That's cool.
So,
Are they super serious?
no,
Okay.
they're serious sometimes,
Yeah.
and they're totally wear gorilla suits and go crazy in their music videos other times. It's like they have jokes, and they take themselves seriously in a harmonious way.
Okay.
And it's expressed through their visual art. Like their most recent music video, I don't think there's any jokes that I know of in that one. But it's like maybe two before it was a 40% of it was a joke.
You know, I feel like comedy is a necessary element in a human life.
It's just bursting out of us all the
So,
time.
what I don't necessarily agree with is pigeonholing a certain wavelength in which you routinely include comedy in your art. If you feel called to be a comedy artist, fuck yeah, do it. And that doesn't mean you're not serious. And I think that's one of the really resounding things in what you're saying. Like, just because you're funny doesn't mean you don't mean it in other senses or at other times. It doesn't mean you don't have. So the one doesn't exclude the other. But I think that there are many artists who don't exactly have jokes spewing out of them who can make cool, serious art.
That's true.
And they may get the comedy in their lives some other way. So it's like, I think it's cool and I think it's noble and real when people who are like Black Dahlia Murder also include those sides of themselves. And I don't think it detracts from their ability to say a serious thing. I think it helps us understand that they're real and exactly the way that you described it.
Totally.
I just think it's not necessarily a requirement for everyone involved.
Yeah.
I think if, well, I don't know. I think if certain bands, like I try to think of like Death Spell Omega, like kind of more comedy. I don't think it would help.
Yeah, certain bands it wouldn't work with.
They're going a different direction. It's just what you're going for.
Yeah, it's like,
right?
yeah, totally. It's funny, I think because they're...
It's hot.
Something about heavy metal is like going to battle. There's something about preparing for war in heavy metal when you think about the live experience of like the shouting in the pit and the circles and the pleasureful pushing, the riling up of each other, and then the pulling each other up. Like there's this circular pushing human dance. It's almost like heavy metal taps into this part of the human spirit that's called for activity and energy, like sort of unbounding, like not necessarily for war, but for something great.
I definitely feel that it is both a disruptive energy and a call to higher levels of order. Like it's funny that different people interpret the energy differently. I've seen some people for whom when the greatest of all bands plays and they're there, what happens is they start running around. And I've seen people when, for their opinion, the greatest of all band plays, and they're like,
Taken.
and that's maximum. That's
Yeah.
because their brain's going so fast it doesn't have time to run around,
Yeah.
right? I need to soak it all in. And so different people interpret the energy differently, but I definitely feel the energy as both sort of like, it's like spicy food. It tastes good, but it's also messing with you. But the messing with you helps pull out the flavors
Eating poison.
a little bit.
Alcohol.
And it tends to be for people who have, I think, who have gained wisdom or courage or some kind of understanding, maybe a spiritual understanding in the presence of abrasive, difficult, or terrible things. They've been in some scenario where it was terrible, but it also taught them a bunch of things, or the way they came through it was really important. It taught them who they were, or something to that effect. It's not the only way to interpret that energy, but I think like, and I've talked about this. Is it okay if I go on this
Yeah,
little
go
rant
ahead.
here?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like what people call sort of the more negative oriented genres, or the quote unquote darker genres, which is a really loaded term that I don't like, such as metal and goth and certain parts of hip hop for sure, psytrance, lots of different things. A lot of punk is this way too. But it's kind of like, for me, metal is like a walled garden where there's this huge imposing wall, and the wall's made of stone and it's covered in spikes, and so you can see the impaled corpses of people who tried before you. It has various levels of intimidating architecture on the outside. But the thing is, it's a garden, and if you can get up over the wall, the garden is yours. And as soon as you get up over the wall, you realize, well, the wall was there. The wall's there to make a safe space in a way for people who can scale such a wall. And metal musicians often come in as metal fans. Metal fans often come in for the intensity and the harshness and the kaboom of it all, and the way that it helps them resonate and deal with their own emotions that are wilder than society permits, but are nonetheless real and very compelling, and you have to deal with them one way or another.
Yeah.
And so they get some of that, but I think a lot of them stay because they realize that what comes out of that contemplation is beauty and order and truth and vitality and a sense of identification with the thing that one once feared, which is the same. There's a sort of a form of transcendence. Like when I listen to really what people call brutal music, really fast blast beats and really complicated, heavy, complex, layered guitars and things like that. Like, it's sort of like they're fast, so I don't have to.
It relaxes my brain.
Yeah.
I can add to that. I can say like
Chill out.
when I hear crazy awesome metal, it does relax my brain and
Yep.
I'm able to just go, oh, they're doing it for me, so I don't have to.
And like on the one side, on the outside of the wall, you think they're screaming at you, but as soon as you get over the wall, you realize they're screaming with you.
Right.
What if we called our band Eden,
Ooh.
which means walled garden? Some grunts of displeasure over there.
Well, I mean, what? Tell me more.
I'm just feeling it out.
Yeah. I think it means walled garden. Yeah, safe space, but also a wild place.
Yes.
Bounded wilderness.
And because it's an interior wilderness that people often hold, like metal is often taken up by a lot of introverts, certainly not exclusively, but there's a lot of them in the scene.
Yeah.
And so they have vast
Playing guitar in your closet for 18 years kind of thing.
But oh my god, look what it can do.
Yeah. Look at what Buckethead can do.
Yeah. And in a beautiful way, when they're like, damn it, it's time to be in a band. That process brings them back to the flock, like back to the tribe, like they have to get along with these other people. Oh shit.
And then people, you get tired. You start
1,000
doing
years in the desert. Yeah.
You do jun jun, jun jun, jun jun, jun jun, and you're like, okay, I got that. And you get back to it.
Yeah.
And
Oh, I
you're
know.
just like,
That was a
no, I
Metallica
need
song.
more.
Yeah, there is like
okay, alright.
the tech component.
Dude, it's
to
just
metal,
there
like-
in classical and
Like you
in
just
jazz.
gotta get mega skills, but it's different than the skill. It's like different than jazz skills,
Mm-hmm.
They're different.
but it
They're
is
different.
closer to classical skills. Doing runs and like,
Sweeps and a lot of tremolo and stuff.
And-
Stops, a lot of rhythmic.
and that's
lot
part of the
rhythmic.
whole culture of metal. It's like that's kind of cool. You know?
Yeah,
And it's
sick
also
can you get?
silly. Like sweeps are
It
kind of
is.
silly. You know.
Most of the time.
Yeah.
Most of the time.
You
Right.
know, it's like
Yeah.
maybe like mustard.
Kind of like R&B runs. Like they're super
right.
technically skillful, and anybody who runs that shit is amazing by definition. But sometimes they run runs over just stuff that's just not dramatic enough of a lyrical point to justify.
Oh yeah.
And it's like,
The vocal.
but it was about
runs.
something like Beauty and the Beast, and it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah. It's like Phil Collins.
Well, yeah, totally. And
What did
guitars
he
are
do?
guilty of that too.
Lion King, I think. I think Phil Collins did
Did
the
he?
Lion
Oh,
King
yes.
soundtrack.
Oh,
He got
yes.
like an
Well,
Academy Award
Well,
for
I
it.
thought it was pretty
He
good,
and,
wasn't it?
Elton John.
Are we
Okay.
saying that it's good? Did you guys like the Lion King album? Soundtrack?
I mean, I like Phil Collins.
Into the
I like Face Value and No Jacket Required. I don't remember. I don't think I've ever seen it. Lion King.
It was like some of the best little kid music that I heard, but I
Yeah.
probably don't really carry it into adulthood in a direct way.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's well said.
But
I
I
agree
felt
with
it
that.
Did
at
you
the
guys see it
time.
when you were kids? Is that
Yeah.
why?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Stepmom took
What
me.
year was that?
Sister cried. They wanted to sue. They were happy people were suing. I was like, that's a
Suing
movie.
who? What are you talking
Disney
about?
for making it too sad. Remember that?
Sue for what?
People
Mental
sued.
anguish.
Yeah, people sued Disney that Mufasa died
What
because the
the
kids
hell?
lost their
Spoiler
minds.
alert.
Okay, look, real quick. Let's take Disney plot to task. So, mostly, Disney main characters don't have dads.
Huh?
Mostly they don't have moms, or no, mostly they don't. Yeah, there's some-
Stepmoms.
yeah, there's a lot of stepmoms
Yeah.
and no dad, or there's a lot of
Yeah, there's not a lot of dad in story.
right, and there's mostly a huge lack of mom, even more than a lack of dad. Because you think about it, like Ariel, she's got Triton.
There
But
is
where's mom? Closest
Yeah.
thing to mom is Ursula. The
There's
villain.
always a Prince Charming. though.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
We're all
the evil
Prince Charming over here.
stepmother and like the witch and in Sleeping Beauty and all it goes on and on and on. So it's like it doesn't surprise me
It's
that they
kinda-
have
yeah.
the same lack,
It's kind of shitty messaging to be giving kids.
especially young women.
No dads, stepmoms. You just got to find your Prince Charming, and everything will be okay.
Yeah.
Dude, Beauty and the
Forget
Beast
about-
is a total abuse tale.
Forget about the fact, forget about that. We need more dads, and we need to take personal responsibility.
Right. Well,
Right.
I like that. I like that.
Like if I just love him well enough, he'll turn from a giant monster into a prince. Like that's not a good message. Just saying.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't really think of that's a good sentence too. See, Evan here's a good talker.
And they
Corn is the voice of the future. Final Corp. Finally, a corporation with only its best interests in mind.
With only its best interests. So like every corporation. What purified it in crap. Oh my god.
Hey Mom, what's for dinner?
Well, I was thinking of making some gelled meat casserole.
But we had that for breakfast.
Well, how about a nice big stack of salt pancakes with melted gummy bear sauce?
But we had that for lunch today at school.
Okay, honey, how about a couple of bowls of mayo?
Thanks for listening. That was
Nice.
a
What
little
was that?
number
What was
called "If You Know What I Mean."
Who's the artiste?
That's moi.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
you. Excellent.
So thanks for listening. Just
So
a little ditty.
when'd you make that?
I don't know, a few years ago.
What's it about?
It's about if you know what I mean. Just that phrase.
Like a
If
colloquialism.
If you know what I mean.
If I may be so bold,
kind
it's
of
a
a funny
colloquialism of
phrase.
like, let's connect.
Yes. If you know what I mean.
Or I would like support.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Nice.
Okay, what do you-
Confirmation. That's cool.
Yeah. Well, thanks. What do you got? What do you got over there?
Okay, so
Computer.
Evan and I are definitely metal guys. We were talking about metal earlier, and we may even broach it again after this. But this is a song I heard recently, and I don't actually remember which song it is. But this band I've been listening to a bit recently, and I've enjoyed it. And it's short, but
Okay.
it's intense. So
All right. How long are we talking here?
It's hopefully not a copyright violation. I guess we'll find out. Is that Dwarf? Cool. Was that Dwarf Wizard?
What is that?
Arcania.
Arcania.
Ah.
I just made up the name Dwarf Wizard.
Oh, okay. Servants
Was
of
it-
Hypocrisy.
Is it two vocalists? Or is it
I don't
just-
know.
I would think so.
Sounded like
It had
two.
some dog and cat vibe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was cool.
I thought it was like I really got it maybe a minute or two into it. I guess I mean the tumbling series of changes in the foreground I slowly began to realize was a cycle, and then I settled into the sort of tumbling changes is the vibe. Like that's what we're portraying right now. And what was interesting was that once I started to enjoy it, it reminded me a lot of Psytrance.
Mm.
It reminded me a lot of a big, super solid, middle of the foreground kaboom beat being surrounded and dodged on either side by strange and semi-progressive elements, like, or just like partially normal sounding, partially bizarre sounding dancers moving around behind this center thing. And so it had this simultaneous quality of driving very directly forward and unmistakably forward, and simultaneously pulling me into different interpretations of what the drive meant.
Hmm.
That was interesting.
Side reminds me of Burning Man.
Huh.
Little bit of Burning Man kind of pulsation going on.
You know, there's some of that there. Especially, I mean, I love the breakdowns, man. It's got to change for me.
Yeah.
And this music that's not my favorite song they do. That song's all right, but that it's pretty cool riff. And I dig it, and it's like I'm thinking about writing music and stuff like that, you know.
Cool. Well, you have a studio. So
Well, I guess.
you have a pretty good studio here.
Yeah.
Cool. That
Yeah.
just sounds good.
Yes, that sounds good. I also
Cool.
have a topic, but I also have a different thing too. What about you, Aubrey?
I'm open to hearing your topic.
So I have two things. Maybe let's ask the audience. Would you rather have me ask Evan about education and history in college, or the topic of stand-up comedy?
Well, I like education and history. That's what I'm into. Stand-up comedy's good too.
Okay.
So maybe 50-50?
Oh, so okay, that sounds cool.
Yeah.
So let me start with this then. So Evan, I know that you went to lots of school. We were living together when you went to school for a long time.
Stand-up history.
Yeah. And you know, I remember it being really hard. I remember there's been lots of late nights, and I mean, it was like a huge deal for a long time.
Yep.
You really invested a lot of your person
Yep.
to get the money and the livelihood to survive, to do it. And you really worked super hard, and you were a teacher for a while. And now you're not the same kind of teacher, but you are good at telling stories, and you often share wisdom on purpose and on accident. And I'm curious if you can just introduce the audience to like a bit of being a historian and what that's like, and what are the feelings you have around that and stuff.
Well, okay, quick bit of clarification. Are we talking about being a historian or about being a teacher? Because those are related, but they are different.
Well, let's talk about you being a historian first.
Okay. So, being a historian is a perspective. It's a perspective that's disciplined by good practices that have built up over a long period of time. So it's as how do I say this? Sort of as scientific and honest as humans can currently get about interpreting their own documentation. And so it has this great burden of physical evidence and of documentary evidence. And so, and it has this great burden of evidence, but simultaneously it has a relentless drive for deeper understanding. One of the weird things about history that people who consume history but don't study it, so they consume a book or a Netflix documentary or a history class in high school, but they don't search through primary source documents. They don't try to construct it themselves. one of the things they often don't get is that people complain about revisionist history as if it's a thing. I guess it's like, well, you're revising history. The thing is, when you study history, you start to realize very quickly that humans don't really exactly know for sure. So
It seems like it's all just a crapshoot. It's all like approximations of what happened.
we are
And
helping.
the conquerors are often the ones who destroy the conquered's records.
And the thing is, if you're a real historian, you understand that principle,
Yeah.
and you work consciously to try to see, to peer beyond the veil of the temple writing into what what the other folks are writing about, and try to get a realistic view of things. Because the more realist, it's one of these weirdly human practices in that, just like being a person, you know that you're not going to know for sure in certain senses about certain things, but you also know that the closer you come to objectivity, the closer I come to objectivity, the better my choices will be. I know I never get there because I'm a subjective creature. It never exactly arrives. But the closer I approach it, the better choices I can make. And so I think that natural human practice in which everyone is a historian extends into the study. And the study of history, and like if you get trained in studying history, like everyone studies history. It's just that historians have a lot of training and practice in how to discipline their own biases or expand their minds or help basically how to frame questions, how to help other people, help them get around their own corners. So it's really, you know what, it's it makes current discourse it makes me feel liberated from the national mess, the state mess, the local mess, the international mess.
Yeah.
It simultaneously makes me feel liberated and depressed because historians have seen it so many times, especially political history. It's so well documented that it's like you see it a few times and you just get pretty jaded about the process. And it's really hard to take anyone seriously who's that close to the top. And
So far, we haven't destroyed ourselves, which is
it's
a good thing.
on the it's
Maybe
like
we are learning a little bit.
So I feel liberated, but I also feel depressed. And then you get kind of like through that process, and it takes courage for historians to come back around to active. I think like all academics, by the time you really learn about something, you have a very deep understanding of how you might screw it up. Like you understanding of the gravity of the situation, the seriousness of it. And the thing is that people who don't know about stuff are more likely to throw up their opinions on a billboard and be like, I don't know, I feel it. But someone who's studied something for a long time is like slower to say inflammatory things about a subject because they have this loyalty to the truth that they understand more deeply and in a more convoluted, multi-sided fashion. But also, I think that part of the journey has been for me coming through that. I watched my aunts and uncles go through that. On my dad's side, there are a lot of them academics who are historians and archaeologists and philosophers and stuff, and they would just stay up in the tower.
Yeah.
And it's a cop-out. And they left the tower in different ways in their life, right? And so I just endeavored to leave it earlier. And teaching did that. Teaching was like, yeah, so what? Anyways, what can you explain to this teenager right now? How can you make all of whatever it is you know real to a person who didn't study any of that in about 2 minutes before they physically can't pay attention?
Yeah.
It's
How
not
do you
even
get
their
them
fault.
interested? How
And
do you
once-
keep them
yeah,
interested?
once they have it, then they'll run with it, but you can't make them.
I feel like the family
So-
tree is a nice intro to just the idea of history. Like, check it out. Your family has history. Let's go. Let's actually look at yours. And, you go back far enough. And it's
Yeah,
like,
it is a nice
wow, this
tiptoe.
person seems totally exotic. It's like, well, that's your forebear. you know?
Yeah. I think that
That's
is
cool.
interesting.
I think there's a podcast on that. It's like they bring people in and
Do the family tree.
like
That'd
a
be
family
fun.
tree.
That'd be fun.
Oh, yeah.
Super fun.
I discovered something interesting about my family tree. My mom did some of that.
Okay,
And
yeah.
one person in my mom's side of the history possessed at least 2 slaves.
Huh.
Yep. And I was like, his name in the records was N. Joe, but the N was long form.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, So I was like, is there any possible way we could reach out to the descendants of this person? Is there like any potential way?
You know,
And
Get 'em on the
And she
podcast.
was like, no, because there was no numbers or
there's
anything.
no way to trace
Yeah.
that. Huh?
And I was like, really? And she was like, yeah. I was like, that's fucked up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
So
Well,
I would have wanted to contact this person or any relative of this person to be like, hey, how's it going?
yeah. Huh?
Something. I don't know. Something.
What was that Arthur C. Clarke quote?
Yeah.
He's like, behind each of us stands 50 ghosts.
Yeah. Pushing us
Yeah.
forward.
Yep. And I think
because just in terms of the number of people that have ever existed, behind each of the 7 billion of us, there's like 50 or 100 people or something. Anyway,
there's a lot of people. It's true.
apparently there was a Zachary Cloutier who was the patriarch of he traveled from France to Canada and just had a bunch of offspring, and he's like the progenitor of all the Cloutiers that now exist
Oh wow.
Huh.
Yeah.
From
Okay.
Canada?
from Canada.
Dang it.
So he he was busy.
I had an ancestor who was a Revolutionary War general
Okay.
and renowned lunatic named
Nice.
Mad Anthony Wayne, and they just called him Mad for short, or Mad Wayne. If
Now-
you're feeling like a little polite.
Jenks, is that like Norwegian or is that Scandinavian?
Jenks is Welsh.
Welsh.
Jenks is Welsh, and
Huh.
you've probably heard the anglicized Jenkins.
Everyone
Okay, there we
knows
go.
there's so
there
many
we go.
Jenkins.
Yeah,
Jenkins
yeah,
is like is the English accommodation for a name with too many consonants close to itself for
Mm.
the English cycle. So
Hmm.
Jenks, Jenks, is the old Welsh name, and it happens at different points. So many times Jenks becomes Jenkins in England when somebody moves to an English realm, right, where they just have to fit in with English society, like back in the 1400s,
Right.
and they're trying to explain it to people. Or it happens on Ellis Island.
Right.
It's the same conversion. So
Huh.
yeah. I got a lot of Scandinavian from my mom's side. Jenks comes from my
Okay.
dad's side. I'm like Scandinavian on my mom's side, and like Welsh and English and German on my dad's.
Okay. So we got a couple Irish people here,
Yeah.
and Welsh and French Canadian.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool. So why history? Why study history?
Yeah.
I study history.
Why were you interested in history?
I think
Or
it
why are
was-
you interested in history?
I think it was. I grew up in a very sheltered environment, and
Okay.
I grew up in a very sheltered Christian fundamentalist environment, and so I was, by royal edict, cut off from a lot of other people's perspectives, a lot of other narratives I was not allowed to have. So other people, which of course made it all the more interesting by the time I got some personal development in, and I really wanted to understand the other kids at school, and I wanted to understand what people were talking about, and so
Right.
it made me really
Oh,
hungry.
not everyone believes this hocus pocus.
Yeah, not everyone believes this stuff, and along with that Christian fundamentalist environment, mostly from my mom, a lot of racism and sexism, and overall, like a truly "you're going to hell" vibe about anyone with a belief system that was even slightly different, like other of the 150,000 varieties of Christians. No way.
Seems like any kind of fundamentalism is.
It gets silly.
Seems
real
bad.
fast.
Seems-
it gets silly real fast.
I mean, it's hard to say it's all bad. But
No, thank you.
any kind of zealotry is like,
Yep.
let's back
I mean,
it off a
but
little bit.
if we three as men had to build a house together and we were zealous about building this house, that would
Fine.
be great because it would end at a certain point.
But ideological zealotry,
yeah,
Yes.
Continues.
like drought zealots, water conservation zealots.
Well, and the drought's over, so it's like,
it's like stop buying
Yeah.
almonds.
yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
Stop
You wanna save
buying
water?
almonds.
Kill yourself.
I seriously
And
don't buy almonds.
Kill yourself and die in a ravine,
Isn't that
so that
weird?
animals will get you.
Oh,
You
you mean
just
like human
back in
beings
the
have an
dirt.
impact, and that's just what's up? Like,
Yeah,
to
most
some
of
extent,
the impact is industrial. The
Yeah.
amount
Oh,
of the residential impact is like nothing.
Yep.
a-
That's well. I mean,
It's
that's
a drop in the bucket, to use a shitty metaphor.
Yes. They
It's
want
a shit in a bucket.
helps them feel like they're doing something.
It's a drop
Because the things
yeah.
that really need to change, you can't make them change from their backyard, and it sucks. Sucks to be an enlightened person and look around and understand, because we're all enlightened in different ways, right?
Right.
There sort of means past the pack in certain ways. We all have that.
Yeah.
You look around, you see how shit's broken, you just it can make you feel powerless in a way that robs you of your own ability to change the things you really can if you let it. Depression. And so I understand people with their weird, to an extent, unless they're total dicks about it, but I understand their weird sort of magical offerings of, I'm going to really sort my recycling to a ridiculous level, and as long as they don't make me do it, that's
Yeah.
like what they're doing, so they can feel as engaged.
Kind of a
like,
libertarian.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I guess, yeah, my upbringing turned me to history, and history was so cool because, oh man, it was a reason to make it impossible to settle on a major. I kept studying different people and becoming fascinated, like jump in the deep end, fascinated. For a semester of my life, I was all about Chinese revolutions. Like, it was the shit. I took 4 classes on Chinese revolutions. It's Santa Cruz. It's amazing.
It's like
it was-
true fiction.
Yeah, it changed my perspective
It's like
on the 20th
story
century forever.
stories that like, oh, but that's not just story. It's something that actually happened.
But
Holy
then,
shit.
but then
Weird.
the next semester, I found African history, and it became so deep. It was everything, and I couldn't conceive of studying East Asia deep as I was into East Africa. And you
You're
do
just
a
too
few of
excited,
these.
and you couldn't
Yeah.
pick one.
Oh yeah, and the things that changes your whole perspective. It gives you a different narrative on the whole world, and you start learning that no matter who's on top or on bottom at any point, like, human beings are really smart and they have extremely valid perspectives. And
And they make good reactions.
Extremely flawed and extremely stupid.
And we're adaptable
all
as
together.
shit.
oh yeah,
Now,
the smartest, most beautiful, amazing things there are on this
Oh,
earth
yeah.
in certain ways. So it's like it became endlessly fascinating, I guess. And the longer I went on, the more human I felt, and
Cool.
the easier it was to forgive other people. The easier it was to go like, bad ideas suck, but people are just caught up in them a lot of times.
Now, some people think that everything operates by the process of evolution. I happen to be one of those people. Now, do you think that, I mean, history repeats itself in a sort of general cyclical way, but do you think that things are, like, do you think culture operates by evolution? And therefore, not necessarily getting better, but just trying out different things constantly? And hopefully incrementally improving over time? Because that's what I think, and I think
Oh, yeah.
that is pretty much happening in all realms of human endeavor, and even realms outside of human endeavor. I mean, that's how I think all things operate through evolution, which is, by which I mean trying out variations to see which one is the most adequate for whatever's happening.
I think that is two-prong answer. Okay, prong number one is weird little historical anecdote. So,
Cool.
Pilgrims and before them, but long before them, sort of adventurer types come over to the east coast of the United States,
Explorers.
and venture capitalists and such, landing in the South trying to score it big on tobacco while nobody's looking, or this year, like very like short-term game kind of people come over first. They have this weird interaction, and the settlers generally have a weird interaction with native peoples because they have a different time concept. So native peoples oftentimes have a time concept that is more cyclical in its emphasis. This
Right.
happens, and this is and this, then this, and this. Then we come back around, so be ready
Saturn
for it.
returns, and we start again.
Right.
It's a little
And
bit
the
different.
rains come at this time, so you've got to be ready in these ways, and these plants go off at these times. So you really have to be aware of what day it is, and we all have to be like cognizant of the cycle,
Mm.
especially if you're on the move. If you're going from one spot to the next, you have to know when,
Right.
because there's only this one time when the clams are on the shore at the right number to feed everyone. So they have a very cyclical consciousness. And people from Europe often had a linear time concept, or a very heavily linear time concept, from history to prophecy, from what the Bible said happened to what the Bible says will happen.
Right.
Right, and they were somewhere in the middle on the line.
Rapture is the end, and then
And so they're on this line in which everything was supposed to change over time. And so they bashed heads because, you know, they both look at each other and like, you don't even understand how the universe works.
Yeah.
And they're both right. Right? So it's
Right.
changing cycles over
I think
time.
the systems approach I think is more fruitful.
So it's like, it's important to understand cycles, right? But
Yeah.
if you adhere too tightly to a cycle, then you can't harness change, and you can't develop in the same way.
You can't have the long view.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, both are needed for the long view, I think. You know, my dad went to Japan in the late 80s, early 90s on behalf of several Silicon Valley companies, and he was over there hanging out after the big speech. So after those speeches are done, everybody's just chilling, and you know, some younger guy asked him, like, "Hey, so what's blank corporation's 100-year plan? Where do you see it going? You know, like, what's the long game?
100 years.
Like,
I'm not going to be around. I don't care about 100 years.
and he's like, oh my God,
My
100-year
grandsons will be
plan?
cleaning pools.
We don't have a 10-year plan. We have a 1/4 plan. We technically have a
Right.
3/4 plan, but
Right.
everybody knows 2 and 3 is BS.
Trying to maximize our profits
Right.
this quarter, and then we'll worry about next quarter.
Myopic.
And have you heard of the quick parenthetical? Have you heard of the Clock of the Long Now, or the Long Now Foundation?
No.
So they built this. Basically, the idea is to encourage long-term thinking. So this, I think it's a nonprofit. Brian Eno is involved, and some other mega thinkers, and they built this thing called the Clock of the Long Now, and it has, I think, 5 digit places for the year. So currently it would be 02017 is our current year. So the idea is, and the clock, I think it's every 1,000 years it ticks once.
Huh.
And
The slow ticker.
and they're trying to embed it in the center of a mountain so that it'll be safe.
Continue to
And
tick.
yeah, their whole thing is like, we got to stop thinking in even 100-year
Yep.
increments. We got to think in like 1,000-year, 10,000-year increments. And that's just a cool thing. I don't know how much
Automation,
I don't know
maybe.
how much they do, but that's a
That's cool.
cool like mindset shift.
Right on.
And I think
So-
if humans become immortal, or like, you know, basically you upload your mind file or whatever, I think that would encourage long-term thinking too. If you knew you could live 10,000 years, or if you could just you could just set arbitrary limits on your lifespan.
Yep.
I mean, there's still going to be a piano falling on your head, and you still die that way. But if you knew you could live as long as you wanted to,
Yep.
it would. I mean,
It would change
the
your
world would be
perspective.
so different.
It wouldn't be like, oh, I don't really think that poisoning the river is a big deal. You could hang out for 100 years and stare at how it is a big deal
Yeah,
and just really grok. Like,
Yeah.
damn it. This
What's your-
place used to be cooler.
yeah. What's your 1,000-year plan? Well, 500 years. I'm gonna go to the moon, get some land. You know, go to Mars, get
Build
some land.
farm.
Yeah.
You know,
Farm on the
Once-
moon.
once
Couple
terraf-
100 years.
yeah.
I'll come back.
Once
after that.
terraforming is done, which would probably take 50 to 100 years to
Spend a
do
few hundred
robotic,
years in the
robotic
desert.
terraforming.
one thing
Burn
that I think
Man.
is we may be able to get a little bit, we may be able to begin what we're talking about through a little bit of a different mechanism, through a social mechanism.
We buy a big boat.
And that is, you know, with computers, it's so much easier to record human beings' thoughts and ideas, right, in many forms
Right.
of communication, right, than it's ever been before.
Yes.
And I wonder if people now could be more proactive about recording their thoughts for future generations, so that people in the future knew what we were dealing with, what we tried, how it
Right.
went, how it felt. Like, just trying to skip you ahead in case you're
Yeah.
curious.
Well, that's kind of what
That-
this could be.
And normally, only the king and only the pharaoh and the priests get to do that. Normally, only they get to scratch it on the side of the
Right,
building.
right, right.
But
Yeah.
now it's different, and
Yeah.
maybe
I have a
we can live longer through that.
something related. So you remember Roger Ebert, the movie critic?
Yeah.
He got this like horrible jaw cancer,
Yeah, yeah.
and he just had to get his lower jaw removed, so he couldn't talk. But he had like the Stephen Hawking-ish, board where he could speak through it.
Yeah, I saw that.
So this is the cool part, is that he had been on TV and radio so much that almost every English word he had spoken. And so a company like basically made a speech board for him using his own voice.
Hell yeah.
Because there was so much, audio visual documentation of his
Well,
voice.
I could just
And like we're in the phase now where anyone could have that, because if you're just
Right.
doing YouTube videos or if you're doing a podcast,
Just all your
you
phone
and I
calls.
are covered.
your great grandkids
Yeah,
can hear
great
you
phone
and
calls.
see you like never before.
Yeah.
And I think about
Because
like,
our generation, we have this faded photo,
yeah,
black and white
Yeah.
photo.
I
There's your
think our
there's your
kids-
grandfather. Like, oh man,
our
I wonder-
kids will be like, "Where's the live stream podcast of
Right.
Grandpa?"
Right.
And we'll be like, "Oh,
Where's
well,
the
that just
holographic-
wasn't there."
Yeah, where's the holographic nano representation, nano machine representation? Where's the
Holographic
gray
nano,
goo? Where's the
yeah.
gray goo representation of grandma?
Oh yeah,
We didn't have that back then. We just had full audio, visual, 4D, 4K.
I mean, this is not bad with all the cameras rolling.
No,
it's not bad.
No. So, do I think everything's evolving? Definitely.
Cool.
You look at
And evolution isn't necessarily always going to the best
no.
version. It's
No.
just trying out different versions.
Yep. And there's more than one right answer.
Yes.
It's really interesting. It's like you look at sea creatures on a coral reef, and you see different generations of thinking, different generations of innovation,
Right,
like-
right.
and perfectly valid animals at very different styles. You look at a
That's kind of what history is, right?
sea urchin and
Yeah.
a crab and a fish, and they're radically different bodies and missions, and
Yeah.
yet they all make sense all this much time later. They're still totally great idea.
They all take in food and create other versions of themselves, and it's just trying out different versions of that
The
paradigm.
trilobites are great. The
Yeah.
trilobites, like the bottom of the ocean, the horseshoe crabs, they're doing great.
Something has to die for me to live every
the
day.
dinosaurs shit on my car. They're fine too.
The Earth
Sense.
is one big compost heap.
There's
It's true.
turkeys walking around, and I would cut their dang heads off and eat them if there was ever a breakdown in the
Yeah.
area.
Yeah.
And ironically, I want to touch on that point for a moment. So the idea that it would be cool if some shit went down for there to be turkeys
Economic
to
collapse.
for there to be turkeys whose necks would be then wrung and then eating time, right? Those
I would
turkeys have to-
capture them and get them to reproduce.
So the thing is, like,
Yeah.
those turkeys have to be out there in the first place.
Yeah.
And so I feel like, to touch on a slightly deeper point, we have an issue in our society where we can't agree, functionally speaking, on what we already agree on. Like, I know so many rednecks who love the outdoors and love the hell out of the outdoors.
Mhm.
And they love it so much they dress like it when they're not in the outdoors.
Yeah.
They just want to look like a tree.
Yeah.
Like, it's
It's true.
where they
They're hippies
feel
in
the
disguise.
freest.
Yeah.
It's where they feel the strongest and the purest. It's where they feel like their instincts make sense.
Yeah.
It's where they feel like life lines up, and it's Zen meditation at the same time that it's taking a life and bringing food home for the kids. And you know what? They want there to be game in the fields and fish in the water as well, right? And I know hippies who just love the hell out of nature,
Yeah.
and who really would give up their free time to just go help a forest be better. When they want to have a glorious time, they take it as close to nature as possible.
Yeah.
Right?
Like my wedding.
Right, like your wedding,
Right.
or like a psytrance party in the forest where everybody spends a week decorating the place just to have a huge dance party. Then they spend another week cleaning it up and making sure that it's spotless before they leave.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those people on those two groups need the agency and the mechanism and the authority to both say, we like nature and or the outdoors, whichever one you like calling it, and we want it to be well, and we want to pass laws or organizations in our society that make that happen, even though we enjoy it differently, and even though we have trouble seeing eye to eye on other shit.
Yeah. I
We
like
need
that
the
idea.
mechanism to be able to do what we agree on and feel good about the doing, and then grow the alliance from there.
Yeah.
Rather
Like
than having to be
open
like
up national
binary
land
split
to be used by us.
Democrats or Republicans, all that crap.
That would allow us to open up like local public land to be used for something productive, like a meeting or a certain kind of farm or retreat center.
Mm.
You know, public land. It's beautiful, and there's a lot of it. It's just sitting there.
That's that's one of the great legacies of our government is national parks. That's
Mhm.
pretty cool.
Yep. And even-
Yosemite is pretty cool. Binary classifications. I think it's the whole left-right hemisphere thing. That's just I'm pulling that out of my ass, but that just feels right. Feels like a good theory.
We're susceptible to duality.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Yep.
But we also have the gear to transcend it, or we wouldn't be talking about it.
Yeah. So we got to go to the margins for the kick-ass theories and
And
ideas.
I think we go to the
art,
margins by making
music.
crazy music.
Yes.
I
Some
think
of us
that
do.
helps us go to the margins. Maybe this triad even, and another gent who isn't here.
Remember that Fugazi album, Margin Walker? Great album title,
Mm.
right?
Is that the one with the guy with the cum on his face? Is
Yep.
I don't remember.
It's got something. I think it's mayonnaise.
it? Mm.
That's my guess.
Okay.
So let's all be Margin Walkers.
I have a
I don't like
request.
mayonnaise.
I have a request. My request is, and you get a choice. So it's kind of a game.
Okay, what do you got?
Manding?
Yeah. So it would be fun to try to tell a story with you, like a two-person story. And what comes to mind is that there are two topics. One topic is the boat. Another topic is tour. So there are
Okay.
a couple of options there. And I'll
Okay.
give you the choice, and maybe something we could.
Or
Oh, yeah, you guys toured. I forgot about that.
Yeah, we had a sweet-ass tour.
wait, it's like there's good questions on both of those.
Mhm.
Is there a possibility of a
Yeah, we could take
Another
a
beer?
break or
Oh,
a beer.
break.
and then come back right to that?
Yeah, let's pause it.